Every year there's a lot of books that come out about football, but the things that always drive me towards the book stand to pick it up are ones that are written by guys who played the game at the highest level, and we're happy to be joined by one of those guys, the author of the new book, Concusstitution, and a guy who is a Super Bowl champion, former Dallas Cowboy and Chicago Bear. We are joined by Jay Sadli on the phone. Mr. Sadli, really appreciate your time.
Well, I appreciate the invite, and let me make something clear that I was the co-author, and Tim Imholt was the author because of his publishing and writing skills as compared to mine.
That's always very important. As a writer myself, I certainly appreciate that. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspired you to write this book?
Well, unfortunately, back on July 3rd, 2009, my youngest son was in an accident, and I've been dealing with brain trauma recovery ever since. And when I looked at the treatments and looked at the assessments and all the different doctors and all the different rehab centers, it really brought back a lot of stuff that I went through with my concussions aspect. I had 3 concussions that they qualify concussions if you spend the night in the hospital overnight. And I had 3 of those, and no telling how many others I had that they just said, oh, you just got your bell rung, go get some Gatorade and get back out there. So dealing with my son's rehab, it made me more aware of what's going on. One of the biggest things that I've been able to come out with is that you cannot cookie cutter rehab for brain trauma. It has to be individualized for the person that's needing, and that comes down to diets, that comes down to medicines and stuff like that. It's just been a big challenge, and what happened was with Tim, my business partner, he is a Special Forces Green Beret, and he also worked for the government for protective helmets. So we kind of fit together, and that's how we came up with the book Concusstitution. Welcome to football.
It's a remarkable book that I think is really going to kind of open some eyes. One thing I think is interesting is obviously with the concussion conversation that goes on surrounding football, there's a lot of different sides to it. There's a lot of different arguments to be made. But you make the argument as somebody who played the game and you say had 3 concussions yourself, that when you look at the NFL, you say that the game has never been safer.
Right now, they've gotten a lot better with the equipment aspect and also the head targeting and other things like that. One of the biggest challenges that changed the game was when they were more concerned about the landscaping people putting in that AstroTurf compared to grass. The grass thing was a lot more user-friendly compared to what the artificial turf was. And even now, the game's completely changed because you've got guys now that are over 300 pounds running 4.8 40s, and the velocity of collisions are a lot harder, but also a lot bigger. So I just think that between the AstroTurf and being able to have these larger guys and larger collisions, it's adding a lot more. But the league has gotten a lot better, not only just the league, but also in college, high school, and all the way down to youth sports. I think it's gotten a lot better because of the awareness of things like my book and also awareness that's going on right now as far as how media covers everything these days, but the media being able to get into the concussion deal, you're able to see a lot more awareness and a lot more availability information.
We're talking with former NFL tight end and author of Concusstitution, co-author of Concusstitution, Jay Sadli, here on Texas Football Today. Get involved with the conversation at hashtag TF Today. There's a lot of big names that you guys talk to in the book, and I certainly want to ask you about those, but one guy that I think is most interesting in your book is maybe not the biggest name that you guys talk to. It's Coach Bob Ward. Coach Bob Ward was the first conditioning coach to be employed by an NFL team, and he certainly has a very interesting and I think a unique perspective on this. Can you give people a preview of what Coach Ward had to say for your book?
Yeah, Bob is one of the main reasons that I was able to be successful in the league. He helped me. He was ahead of the curve, always been since day one. We both started in '76 with the Cowboys, and his guiding light for me gave me the best opportunity to make the team, and I was able to do that because if you look at my accountability, my position coach was Mike Ditka, and then my head coach was Tom Landry. Those are 2 guys to be accountable to were very challenging. But Bob brought up a lot of things as far as being able to he brought up things about diets and also things about how the rehab aspect of it. You can't have the rehab same for one guy to another. It has to be individualized. And that was one of the biggest things that he pointed out in the book as far as talking to him. But also he's a big fan about diets, vitamins, and also making sure that you're getting sleep and stuff like that. It was basic stuff, but coming from Bob, it's the best. It's the best.
And then, of course, I think the people whose name people will recognize, guys like Roger Staubach, guys like Randy White, guys like Jim McMahon that you talked to for the book. You know, the thing that I've found in talking with former players is that they all come from their own unique perspective. I think a lot of fans and I think a lot of media members maybe think of football players as all being the same. They all kind of think the same way. They all do the same thing. These guys have their own opinions. They have their own thoughts on the matter. I'm interested maybe what you learned talking with these guys whose names we know, whose names we've seen in the lights, but talking to them about this particular topic. What did you learn in talking with those guys?
Well, Roger, coming from a military background, him and Tim hit it off pretty good because they're both veterans. And Roger talking about his concussions that he had and the equipment that he had back then, it wasn't as good as what's out there today for his grandkids and stuff like that. But right now, what he was talking about was how the equipment has changed, but also how much bigger the guys have gotten. Jim McMahon, he brought up a very unique point because one of the things that there were incentives. There wasn't a lot of money guaranteed in contracts back then, but there were incentives based on times that you play, the amount of time that you play. And in order for him to get an extra 20,000 or whatever it is, the incentive clause was he'd have to stay out on the field. So if he got hurt, I'll give you an example. There was one time at halftime he comes in and he's got a lacerated kidney and he says, "Don't tell anybody because I need to get back out there so I can get my bonus." So what he would do is he would take some pills and go out there and not tell anybody, but eventually they did pull him out of the game, took him to the emergency room, and he had surgery on it. But I think one of the guys that was very detailed about it was Randy White, with him being such a great one of the best, if not the best, defensive tackle ever played the game. His aggressiveness, and he really liked the AstroTurf because he said it gave him an advantage of being faster going against bigger offensive people, offensive guards, and tackles, and stuff like that. But he liked the turf, which was kind of surprising to me because I didn't like the turf, and because I had back when I was at South Carolina, they installed AstroTurf my freshman year. In spring ball, we had 17 guys that tore their ACLs on that new turf. I've never been a big fan of that stuff, but Randy brought up some good points on it. Also talked to Howard Richards and a couple other guys also.
And finally, I'm always interested whenever we get the opportunity to talk with a guy who played like you did. You played for 7 years in the NFL, most with the Cowboys and then with the Bears. You won a Super Bowl there in 1977. When you look back on your career, is there one game that stands out as the memory that you'll always remember?
My claim to fame, and I was 9 years, by the way, 7 in Dallas,
yes.
Actually 2 in Chicago. My claim to fame, and I have the ball to this day, is I caught Roger Staubach, also known as Captain America's last touchdown pass against the Rams.
But yeah, that's probably a ball that probably in a case, right? Somewhere you keep a little safe.
Yeah, I do, and I was going to give that to him, but I'm just waiting for the right time.
He is Jay Sadli. He is the co-author of Concusstitution. Welcome to Football, a new book available on Amazon. Make sure you check it out there. Is there where else can other people get the book?
Well, Amazon would be the best place. There are a couple bookstores that do have it, but right now the best place would be for the Amazon.com, just like everything else, because Amazon is really creating their own world and killing the retail market.
Well, he is Jay Sadli, a former NFL tight end and co-author of Concusstitution. Welcome to Football. Mr. Sadli, really appreciate your time. Congratulations again on the book, and best of luck down the road.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And once again, Dave Campbell's a great book. I've always had their book. It's amazing the lights that they put on high school football. And if you look at what it is right now, Dave has always been ahead of the curve, and I really appreciate this opportunity.